we went in and we got the order to go into the capital city of Palermo. But before that, we had a pass to go through in the mountains that gave us a lot of trouble. And the Germans controlled the pass. So we lost a lot of men and stuff. But we got into the capital city, and then the city itself had capitulated. Most of the Germans had left. But the civilians were on the street, and the 3rd Infantry Division, they were in there. And the civilians were raiding the German warehouses for food stuff. And
Cat-F. Welcome to World War II Live. I am John C. McManus, and that was Donald Evans, who was in the 66th Armored Regiment of the 2nd Armored Division in World War II. 2nd Armored Division, incredible unit, hell on wheels, fought throughout really the entire war, and as he pointed out, they're in the thick of the Battle of Sicily, which is obviously our topic for this episode. In a previous episode, we talked a little bit about the planning and the deception effort, and a little bit about the landings. We wanted to, maybe carry it forward from there to give you a sense, maybe of what it was like on the ground and some of the command dilemmas and all that. So, alongside to do that is my good buddy Kevin Hymel. How are you today?
Doing good, John. I am the Teddy Roosevelt Jr. to your terrible Terry Allen today.
Oh my gosh, wow. Compared with terrible Terry Allen Sr., that is a high honor. Mm-hmm. And Ted Roosevelt Jr., we all know what an amazing guy he was.
And it's appropriate for what we're going to be talking about today, too.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. Absolutely. That kind of bucks me up, to think about Terry Della Mesa Allen, remarkable guy.
I'm here to buck, John. I'm here to buck.
There you go. Gosh, you're really good at it. Yeah, so, and then spinning the dials, as always, is our amazing chief of staff, our crack Emmy-winning producer, 11-time Emmy Award-winning producer, Mark Festoso. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing great. I'm excited today. We're going to try something a little different with Stump the Chumps.
All right.
Yeah, so we usually do 3.
Mm-hmm.
But we have a viewer that really thinks he can stump you, so we're going to do 6 rapid-fire questions and see how many landmines you can miss.
How many face plants we can achieve.
We're going to have to line up our combat engineers now, I think. I think so. A lot of lines in there.
All right, so stay tuned and see what you guys can do.
It's intriguing. Very, very intriguing. Yeah, so in the meantime, Sicily. The Battle of Sicily is so fascinating, just on so many levels, because you're seeing, like from a U.S. Army perspective, this is a force that's really maturing into a leading land arm, in addition, obviously, to the fleet that's required to bring it ashore, the air power you need to cover this whole thing, and then the social milieu that you're part of once you invade Sicily in the summer of 43. So, as we talked about in the previous episode, the landings on July 10th come off successfully, for both 8th Army and 7th Army. And then, then the question is where we go from there.
And John, just to back up a second, that's a big change that happens to the fleet as they leave North Africa for Sicily. They go from being the 2nd Corps to 7th Army. And so the idea was that the British were going to land their 8th Army and we were going to have a supporting corps, but we've got enough troops, tanks, and equipment that we're going to actually have our own army, and George S. Patton's going to be in charge of that. The 7th Army patch is really based on his own personal history. Every step in the letter A on that patch is an achievement by Patton and his command up to that point. And one other important thing going in, Patton had been assigned the 36th Infantry Division. So, as we talked about last time, you've got 3rd ID sort of in the north, you're going to have the 36th Infantry Division in the center, and the 45th Division in the south. And Patton really complains about this to Eisenhower. He says, Jela, that central part, I need a veteran unit. 3rd ID landed in Casablanca, but didn't really fight in Tunisia. But the 1st Infantry Division had and fought really well under terrible Terry Allen. Yeah. And so he requests, borderline on demanding, I need 1st ID in this fight. Eisenhower agrees, but there's a caveat. Once the island is secure, they are to pass it off to the 9th Infantry Division, and Allen for sure, and Roosevelt are not as clear about, but Allen is to head back to the United States, where he's going to go into training and come back as a corps commander. I've read this several eyewitness accounts. And the reason I bring it up is Omar Bradley famously says, I fired Terry Allen because when his unit wasn't on the line, they were rambunctious to a point of horror. And so I did. No, Patton did it. It's all in the letters, all in the diaries, all in the official records. But we can revisit that as we get into the island. But it's going to be a night landing, and it's not going to be what we think of when we think of Normandy. The shoreline is not heavily defended. Engineers and then the infantry are going to go in, and they're going to do pretty well. Now, John, I can talk about it in general, but you, I think, know a little bit more about La Cata on the northern side.
Yeah, so the journey there, the Odyssey across the sea, is not pleasant at all. And, we all know, of course, that Eisenhower has to make the terrible, difficult decisions in relation to the weather with the Normandy invasion. A lot of dilemmas there. Not as well known is the fact that, there's a bad storm that comes in after our fleet has put to sea. And so this is a miserable experience for the sailors and soldiers who are aboard those ships, getting buffeted around. You got people seasick, and of course, in addition to the nervousness of the oncoming invasion, the third ID is, of course, a very, very big part of that. There to anchor the entire western flank of these Allied armies at La Cata. So that is basically the beachhead where you're landing. You're facing, kind of disinterested Italian opposition, although there's some 47 millimeter guns that are quite dangerous to the landing craft. But obviously the division gets ashore. The 7th Infantry Regiment is the lead unit that General Truscott, who's in command of the 3rd ID now, chooses to do this. They're going to get ashore and anchor that entire western flank and move inland. It's the 1st Division that absorbs the most potent Axis counter move, which is, of course, the famous counterattack to snuff out their beachhead at Jela, in addition to the 82nd Airborne fighting there with the Big Red 1 as well.
And, John, I remember sending you pictures because I went to La Cata Beach in Sicily, a number of years ago, and the only thing I could find was a really low-to-the-ground bunker. And I just don't know how effective that thing was. Now, granted, there were no hills like you have at Omaha Beach. The area, which is ironic for Sicily, for God's sakes, is really flat right there along those beaches. And unfortunately, Jela, they've built a big oil rig facility kind of thing. And so you lose that same vista that you would have had in 43. But First ID is going to go ashore with the Rangers kind of leading the way and some engineers making sure the docks are intact. Patton's going to come ashore. Now, of course, 82nd is really the unit that's going to start the entire invasion with the 505th under James Gavin parachuting in at night, and highly a mess. I mean, just all over the place. Not a very
constant. And heavy winds. I mean, that's the problem.
Yep. And don't a lot of those aircraft either end up in the Mediterranean, or some of them even just turn around and land without ever, getting the guys to jump out of the planes?
There's a few, but they had strict orders, not to do that. But some of them did. Some of them went off course. There were navigation problems.
There were clouds. It was nighttime.
Yeah, there were coordination problems. But the main problem for the paratroopers is those high winds. So I'm having trouble remembering the exact mile per hour. But in other words, it was like if you did a training jump, you would cancel it anywhere from like 15 to 20 mile per hour winds. There were 35 mile per hour winds over Sicily that night. Yeah. So in a way, these crews are doing well just to get to Sicily at night, the air crew, and then much less the paratroopers jumping. And so some of them end up scattered all the way down as far as the British, where they are in the southeastern part of the island. But a lot of them come down more or less in from Jela. And they're gonna fight there famously at Biazzo Ridge, holding off a major German counteroffensive and Axis, I should say, actually. And then you're gonna have this terrible, tragic reinforcement, more or less like the second night and a half, sort of.
We can get into that.
Brings the rest of the 504th Parachute Infantry Regiment, and there's a friendly fire incident, which a lot of them are shot down. Yeah.
But getting back to First ID, so they're going to land in the darkness. They're going to take Jela, start moving inland, and Germans and Italians, as per I don't really study much Italian, but German war doctrine is when there's an attack, you counterattack immediately with everything you got. And that's basically what's going to happen at dawn. It's going to take the Germans and the Italians a little while to organize this attack. And Patton is actually going to come ashore right about then. In fact, there was a reporter near him, and he said there was all these soldiers kind of sitting around, and when Patton walked by, they just saw him and picked up their rifles and went into attack. And he goes, I've never seen a general have such an impact on an immediate battlefield before. And so Patton gets in his vehicle, and he goes to visit Terry Allen. And I guess he was going to go visit the Rangers, and he changes his mind and visits Terry Allen. And, that was very fortunate because he would have run right into the Italian-German counterattack. And so this armor assault hits. Patton actually goes up into a apartment building where he sees a Navy guy calling in naval fire. And he says, if you can get your damn Navy to start hitting these areas, we can probably stop them. Then he goes down, and part of me is like, yeah, the guy knew how to do his job. Leave him alone. I do have to question that a little bit. But then he goes down on the street and he actually helps soldiers place mortars in the correct positions to have effective fire. And John, who's the head of the Rangers who's going to bazooka a tank or two? I can't think of his name off the top of my head. Lieutenant Colonel
William Darby.
Darby, yeah, and Darby's really going to come into his own here. Now, he hadn't been doing great in North Africa, but he is sort of a one-man army in some ways, stopping the German attack.
Yeah, the Rangers are very successful in their mission. It seemed like it was going to be a complete walkover, because they're so successful. But the problem really isn't necessarily at the waterline, getting ashore. The problem is in fending off the Hermann Goering division counterattack, obviously. You've got the Assietta division ashore, the Napoli division. These are reasonable quality Italian formation. Then you got 15th Panzer Grenadier, which is like on the western side of the island, and is going to be gravitating toward where the Americans are from. And then so the issue for 8th Army, as they land near Syracuse and elsewhere and start to move kind of northeast, the issue is a very constricted avenue of advance, which goes along Mount Etna, which dominates everything. And so, I'm oversimplifying, but more or less, a lot of the British and Canadians are going to be pinned down along that narrow route of advance in a struggle for the bridges, which is just desperate at that point. And so Patton is sort of chafing at this in the sense of wanting to advance as far as he can and not just protect their flank, right?
Mm-hmm. And I'll say this about Montgomery. Before they went in, so it's Montgomery's 8th Army on the right, Patton's 7th Army on the left, and then they're commanded by General Alexander as the Army Group Commander. Mm-hmm. And Montgomery kind of told Pat point blank, listen, when I get ashore, I'm doing my own thing, and I recommend you do the same. Patton didn't believe in this. He said, no, Alexander's our leader, our commander, but he will change. He will eventually take Montgomery's advice, because what Montgomery does when he finds himself in that bind, he figures, well, I can shift to the left and kind of get around these. Well, the whole 45th Infantry Division is on his left, with the Vizini Road or whatever it is, and they go to Alexander, and Montgomery says, I want to shift, and Patton complains. He says, no, we're going to let him do it. And so Patton has to take an entire division and basically move it from one side of his army to another. So wasteful, so stupid. And there's one point early on in like the first day or two, there's a liaison officer between Montgomery and Patton, Enriquez. And Montgomery one night says, tell Patton to shift his troops, west a bit. And he goes, actually, tell him left, because he's not smart enough to know east and west. And part of me thinks this might be just his acerbic sense of humor, but Patton didn't get the joke when Enriquez came and tried to cushion it, and he said, God damn it, tell me exactly what he said. And he did. It pisses Patton off so much, he orders the early landing of the 2nd Armored Division into the Jela beachhead, just to, get more strength into his army to spite Montgomery. So we're off to a rollicking good start with Allied cooperation.
Oh, just the love between the two of them is started off. It's such a love affair. So on the other side of the hill, of course, The Axis are in a weird position here where Italy's in rotten shape.
Yep.
Mussolini's never been terribly popular on Sicily. The Germans have sent 2 first-class divisions to Sicily, but they've had to cover a lot of the Mediterranean, and so what are they hoping to get out of this? Certainly kind of a delaying action, I guess you could say. But, initially they're thinking, okay, if we can snuff out the beachhead, let's do it. This goes by the boards, of course, at Jela. There's a number of reasons for that. The Big Red 1, the 82nd Airborne, naval bombardment, which is crucial, airstrikes, so on and so forth. So then it's a matter of Patton beginning to advance kind of northwest the most he can, and then the Sicilians themselves, many of them or most are pro-Allied, and so this has been. I know you and I have talked about this before. This is a really interesting byproduct of an immigration pattern in this country. That we've had a lot of Italians immigrate to the United States, many from Sicily, in the decades before this. And so this is a major force multiplier in the sense that almost everybody you meet as you go through Sicily has a brother, a cousin, some sort of relative, a friend, or whatever in America, and you've got a lot of Italian-American GIs too, especially in the Third ID, by the way. So this is really good for local communication.
And we were talking about, there's a story out there with the 82nd. I don't know the validity of it. I think I may have read it in the Time Life series on World War II, that one of the paratroopers from the 82nd, when he parachutes in, he lands on a roof of a house and crashes through, and it's like his parents or grandparents, like small world right there. And John, you've heard that story, right? We talked about that.
I mean, I don't know if it's 100% true, but it wouldn't surprise me. It actually fits with the entire picture here.
And the advantage that we try to use is there is a reach out to mafia members in the United States in jail, and an offer of amnesty if they help, the Americans as they go. But what happens in reality, they do kind of set up a rough program, but Patton flies over the island so fast it really never really has a chance to gel or be effective, because everybody's meeting the Americans with open arms. And that's got to be surprising, because Sicily is the first part of the Axis countries that we go into. North Africa, that was territory that was being fought over, but Italy is part of the Axis power, Sicily's part of Italy, and they just shake hands with the Americans when they come ashore, and
Some do and some don't, but most do, we should say, and there's a lot of excitement, and you've got that, but you also still have some hardcore fascist holdouts. You've got Italian army, you've got German resistance, so it can be a little dicey figuring this out, and I do think that the help of the mafia is significant in that regard, but really it has more effect later on once we control the island and all the black market
food distribution and things like that.
But in the meantime, what's epic to me about this phase of the Sicilian campaign is what the Third ID is asked to do. So they're going to make that westward push to a town called Agrigento, and Agrigento is really interesting. Because it's the Greeks who basically, originally founded it and created that town. And so it tells you Sicily's incredible history of all these invaders over many, many hundreds of years. We're just the latest. So we pivot on Agrigento, and then we go north all the way through, the high ground, all the way past Corleone, and then on to Palermo. And this is where Truss got training them up.
I'm gonna jump in, John, on you, because I just want to mention it with Agrigento, that Patton basically is doing carrot stick, methods with Alexander, saying, "Hey, can I go there?" And he's kind of like, "No, we got to kind of support him." Well, can I send patrols there? Okay, you can do that. And so he's sending basically infantry regiments, calling them patrols. And why is Agrigento important? Well, you got to remember, Patton landed on a bunch of beaches. Montgomery landed in Syracuse that has ports and port facilities. So all the equipment coming into Patton is going through the British. So if he can take Agrigento, he's got his own port, he can support his own army, and have that kind of independence that we talked about. And so it's sort of that sort of thing that Patton's famous for, that like, oh, he's this swashbuckling rogue hero, he's not telling his superiors exactly what he's doing. And, it's not a real kickover. There is some heavy fighting getting into Agrigento. And John, you were mentioning the Greeks. I remember Patton's photographs, my first book, Agrigento. It's a photograph of a Greek Colosseum up on a hill. And I was trying to find Agrigento, and I kept getting lost, and I came to a circle, because Europe has a billion of those. And I pull over, and it was raining, and I look up, and there's the Greek, structure right there, the temple or whatever it was. I was like, oh, okay. So Agrigento, a dominating hill and a port. And so once Patton gets that, and the 3rd Infantry has proved what they can do, John, take it from there.
Absolutely. So this is an epic march from Agrigento all the way to Palermo. Now there's a couple little, we're running a little low on time, but there's a couple little things to cover here. Fascinating situation in a town where you got sniper problems in a lot of these little towns and whatnot. There's a battalion commander named John Heintges in the 7th Infantry Regiment who decides that the way he's going to eliminate and flush out a sniper is basically make himself a decoy.
Yeah.
And, he takes several of his soldiers and
that's not
say,
a smart idea.
he says, all right, I'm going to stand out in the street. You take a look and see what happens when the sniper fires, and you eliminate him. And that could have ended very badly for Lieutenant Colonel Heintges.
Really?
Who was a very young guy at that point for a battalion commander. Eventually he's going to retire as a 3-star general. But he's, like a lot of good commanders, including your boy Patton, he's lucky, in terms of surviving situations where he risks his own skin. And it works out exactly like he would have hoped, And so it showed you there were still some pretty dicey situations. Then, of course, it's a matter of physical fitness, too, now. Operating at the height of the Sicilian summer, without that much water, without that much food, on some of the high ground, whatever,
Well, the terrain, John, is just, I think Henny Youngman had a joke that they dropped a bomb on Sicily and it slid off, because that is Sicily. It's just hills and hills and hills. I think if you were to flatten it out, it would be 4 times the size, and so this is not tank country, and I don't even think it's infantry country, John. It's so just brutal.
It's nobody's country. Yeah, exactly. You don't know how anything can move. And so, last thing, and this will be a fun little point between you and me. Of course, the talk was that your buddy Patton wanted the armor to enter Palermo
John,
first.
it's the superior branch. They know what they're doing, and Sicily's perfect tank country.
Oh yeah. The superior branch that needed that sort of waypoint in without being able to do it by themselves. I know, exactly. So there was a little incident with the 7th Infantry in particular and the 3rd ID, in which they were ahead of the armor, and there was a little incident with Hobart Gay, who was he chief of staff for Patton at this point? Or
Yes, yeah.
Okay, so he was trying to tell him, hey, you're not supposed to be doing this. It's supposed to be open for the armor, and the 7th Infantry was like, all right, do you want us to give it back to the enemy? So like something.
And the answer is yes.
The exact kind of thing that Patton would say, I think, and that I just think it's so ironic. So Palermo's a really good get, and obviously important for port reasons, too.
Yep. So, John, I want to come back to this in our next episode, because there is more to say about the capture of Palermo and how just screwed 3rd Infantry is, that they've earned it and they don't really get the glory. But we can talk about that next week, because, John,
there's going to be a lot of that in World War II for them. Yes.
Yeah. But right now, I think we're a pair of chumps. And, John, I'm scared, because Mark is going to, rapid fire question on us. Mark, you're not going to hold like a stopwatch, are you? That
we're going to strap in. Oh, my God. The lightning
all I keep imagining is that show Friends, when they did the lightning round when they were quizzing each other.
I hope it works out better for us than it did for Rachel and Monica.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
All right, Mark, you have the floor. Embarrass us away. Oh, Mark, I can't hear you.
Turn on your mic.
Stay on mute. That way we win.
There you go.
Yeah, exactly.
No, you don't get rid of me that quickly. All right, before we start, John, tell our viewers how they can send in their own questions.
Yes. So the email to send it to is worldwar2live@gmail.com. Worldwar2live@gmail.com. And that is with a numeral 2, not the
Number
Roman
2.
numeral, the regular Arabic numeral. And I think Kevin has something to say about our friend Carl Nam, too.
Yes.
Before we dive in.
Carl Nam, our friend with WW2 History Magazine and Warfare.com. He's one of our favorite sponsors until we get more. And, this is a magazine that's been around a long time. WW2 History Magazine covers all elements of World War II as great departments on personalities, weapons, intrigue, and then big feature stories of battles. And they only hire the most genius writers. Anyway,
except for you, yeah.
Oh, shut up. So if you're interested and you'd like to get a subscription, it's WW2, that's Roman numeral 2, WW2historymagazine.com. I'm going to say that again, WW2historymagazine.com, or you can call 1-800-219-1187. Mark, abuse us.
All right. So, Don Fox sent 6 questions.
Oh, we know Don Fox. He is the king of 4th Armored Division history.
Oh, you
my
must know
goodness.
it, because these are all 4th Armored questions. He's going to try to stump you.
That's what I did.
Well, what was that, John? Abrams?
Creighton
Oh, man.
Abrams.
I think you've answered the first question. Number 1. What member of the 4th Armored Division famously said, "They've got us surrounded again, the poor bastards"?
Yeah, that's Creighton Abrams.
Awesome.
I just went to his grave today. Go on.
Oh, did you? Yeah.
Yep.
Wow.
Yep.
Yeah, so he was the commander of the 37th Tank Battalion, I think, in
Yep.
the 4th Armored Division, and obviously a remarkable commander.
Right, I'm going to come back to him when we finish. I just found something out about him I want to talk about real quick. So, okay, Mark, next.
Well, no, I just one more second on that. So, where did he say that? Was that the Battle of the Bulge?
No, that was early on, I think, to Brittany that he said that. Because the Germans cut the road behind him or something.
Oh, right.
But there's a famous quote of Patton supposedly saying, "There's one person better than me at tanks, and that's Creighton Abrams." That came from a 1968 obit on Abrams. I think it was 68. It was late 60s. I have never read Patton saying that in his diaries, letters, or speeches, or anything. The one 4th Armored Division commander that Patton was repeatedly impressed with was Bruce Clark. He said whenever there was a crisis, Bruce Clark would fly in and take care of everything. Clark is eventually promoted and sent to 7th Armored Division. Late in the war, Patton tries to get him back, as I believe he wants him to command 4th Armored when, I guess, Gaffey is the commander at the time, gets promoted to Corps Command. So that's just, I've never seen that Patton said that about Abrams. He was an incredible tanker, but I just can't verify that quote.
All right. Number 2. On what date did 4th Armored Division make first contact with the 101st Airborne Division at Bastogne?
John, you want to take that?
26th.
Yep, day after Christmas.
1924.
That seems like an easy one.
Lieutenant Bodges with Corporal Webster.
Wow.
Yep.
All right. Number 3. In early 1945, this is a hard one. I might have to Google this one. In early 1945, the M18 tank destroyer received a modification that required troops to receive update vehicle identification training. What was it?
I was going to say true.
That,
All right, hold on. So wait, this is an anti-tank, a tank destroyer? Right?
M18.
Yeah.
It received a modification that required troops to receive updated vehicle identification training. What was that training?
Oh, wait a second. I remember now.
Wow.
It was
well, I mean, you're cheating if you're looking at a book.
I got both of Don's books. I don't know. Don, you win that one.
No, I mean, is it a new gun? Is it?
They get a 90mm cannon, so maybe they had training with earplugs. Or
identification, figuring that the bigger gun would be German. I'm just guessing.
The bigger gun would be German. What do you mean?
Well, in other words, if it's got the the smaller gun, you'd associate that with American armor. If you're putting a bigger gun on the thing, like the jumbo tank and that kind of thing,
Right.
maybe there'd be issues with identification. I don't
Mark,
know.
what's the year for that? What's the time date for that?
Early 45.
Early 45.
Yeah, that's when they bring in the new tank destroyers with the 90 millimeter.
Hmm.
But was it community identification?
Yes. Well, here we go.
Yeah.
This is. I believe I have the answer for you. In early 1945, a modification to the M18 tank destroyer that necessitated updated vehicle information training was the conversion of early M18 hulls into M39 armored utility vehicles.
I said that. I was like, my friend John, you talked over me when I said that. Damn it.
Yeah. In retrospect, you're right. I heard you explaining all that, right?
They're going to get easier from here, right?
The M39 was a turretless variant of the M18. There you go. Wow.
I believe it. If Don Fox said so.
That's.
I think they had a lot of them at the North Platte Canteen.
Wow. That was amazing, that one.
I'm always happy when the North Platte Canteen makes it into an episode.
It has to.
All right, Mark, are we at the halfway mark here, Mark?
Yeah, that was half. That was half. Two, you knocked those out. With that one was.
Yep.
That was a rough one.
He was setting us up for humiliation. Okay, go on.
I think so.
I'm sure there'll be more.
Well, actually, I'm looking at this. There's actually a bonus question, so that'll be interesting. All right, here we go. Number 4. What was the last major river that Patton's Third Army crossed before running short on fuel? Wow.
Oh, so they run out of fuel on the Moselle, so I believe that would have been the Meuse River around Verdun, but that's not Fourth Armored. Fourth Armored's further south, but it still would have been the Meuse. So that's what I say. John?
Hey, I mean, that sounds right to me. So it's nothing there's nothing as he approached Czechoslovakia, nothing like that.
Well, no, he said, Mark, you said in 44, right?
No, it doesn't have a date.
Yeah, he didn't have a date. So that's why I wondered if there was...
But it's when they ran out of fuel, right?
Yeah, before running out of
Yeah, so they didn't really
fuel.
run out of fuel in 45. The logistics were much better. So I'm going with Meuse.
All right. That sounds about right to me.
Okay.
And that's the scene in the movie where he kisses the
Guy on the head.
the guy in the head, right?
Yeah,
And
the guy
fuel.
says, we ran out of gas by morning. The fighting was hand to hand, and you
Right.
see the guy with the knife in his back. So when I worked at Army Magazine, my buddy Pete Murphy, a much older guy, he said that guy who told Patton those lines actually worked for the Association of the U.S. Army, and told him, I've never been able to verify it, but I remember Pete Murphy telling me that guy used to work here. So
that was an actual guy in that scene? That was a real person they were...
Yeah. According to Pete Murphy, he worked at AUSA, and he's the one that said that line.
So that was a unit in the 4th Armored Division?
Yep.
He looked like he was a company commander, but I don't know.
Yeah, he did. He was a captain. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow, interesting. I never knew that.
There you go.
So,
Okay.
we got another minute. So Patton runs short of fuel, right? And this is
Everybody runs short of fuel once they get past Paris, but yeah.
And this is pre-Market Garden.
Correct.
Right? And so then, ostensibly, most of the fuel, the resources, mainly go to support Market Garden.
Right, and part of that is they're flying fuel in with cargo planes, which they then need to fill up with paratroopers.
Right.
And they do this early because you're doing all this prep. So Patton loses, and once you drop those paratroopers, even when the British link up with them, their doctrine is to be resupplied by air, and so you still are using. So Patton really loses an asset. It's not as much the fuel as it is the C-47s delivering it.
Well, and the other thing, too, is that once Eisenhower gives the go-ahead for Market Garden, he doesn't really quite grasp that all of that logistical momentum is going to move towards Market Garden at the expense of Patton and the other armies. And so an example would be there were 3 recently arrived U.S. Army divisions in Normandy that are, just have to be moved to the front. Instead, they basically are hunkered down in Normandy and they're stripped of their trucking, which is going to be used for Market Garden.
Yeah.
And so then Patton, through the September-October period, he's just doing this fighting in the Alsace, but really small advances.
Not Alsace, the Metz area. And,
Metz, right? Yeah.
And
so when,
he crosses the Moselle further south at Nancy, but he's really kind of stuck on it at Metz. And he's basically hoarding his fuel as best he can. And Bradley's really impressed. He's like, my God, we're giving him a trickle, but he's like restricting all vehicles from driving and stuff because he's building up his fuel so he can do maneuvers. And so in November, he'll do a big pincer on Nancy. I'm sorry, on Metz. With the fuel he's saved up. And all this time, so, you're talking about September, October, November, they're repairing all the trains, leading to the front, and you've got the Red Ball Express with the majority African-American truck drivers just basically conveyor belting equipment. So as they repair the infrastructure of France, the access to fuel and everything is better. And then before the Battle of the Bulge, of course, that's when they liberate Antwerp, and that really becomes the main port. So...
Right. So by the time when the 4th Armored breaks through and gets to Bastogne, really the supply situation has changed dramatically.
Yeah,
it's not that they decided to give it to
problem.
them. The logistics have just changed, right?
Somewhat, because that literally, like the day the bulge begins, is the day we can start really using Antwerp. And that's the tragedy of Market Garden, because the British capture Antwerp and the port facilities completely intact on September 4th. And yet we can't really use them because we don't control the Scheldt estuary, that 60-mile inlet waterway and island and all that. And because everything is pivoted toward Market Garden, the Germans backfill. And so in other words, we don't really use Antwerp until like mid-December.
Yeah,
and,
where it should have been
that's really
September.
the sad thing about it.
And John, didn't Montgomery say that his belief was that if his operation was successful, the Germans would have retreated from Antwerp anyway? I think that was part of his argument to Eisenhower, that it would have that effect, I guess.
Yeah, and it was kind of a voodoo type of argument. Obviously it was a disastrous thing.
It's that whole, we'll fire one gun into the air and the enemy will run from the battlefield.
I mean, Market Garden, as I've said many times, is an operation predicated on hope. Hope that they're about to be done and that you just do this coup de main and they're going to fold the cards. And unfortunately, it didn't really work out that way, So,
General Gordon,
one thing I wanted to mention to you, Kevin, it's interesting to get your thoughts on this. So, I think this, September, October period for Patton is, I think, one of the most interesting periods to study because we remember Patton as this, lightning fast, aggressive, swashbuckling commander. But I think
always on the move.
Really demonstrates his grasp of logistics and which is feeding his aggressiveness. He's, don't you think that this is kind of one of the seminal moments for him on some level, just to be able to operate like he did? Yeah,
because he's proving that he can do the slugging match as well as the lightning strike. And, he's kind of fighting with one hand tied behind his back, but he is basically issuing orders. No one is to, entrench. We are always on the offensive. Now granted, the troops didn't really listen. They did foxholes, but the whole philosophy was we stay in motion. We'll have mobile reserves behind the front lines so that if the Germans try to break through, we have quick reaction. And if we find a weak spot, we can at least get to this, next creek or town when he's really got nothing. And, he employs French factory to make what are called duckbills to extend the tank treads. He goes and watches flame-throwing tanks and tries to get them into the unit and wants to add machine. Always thinking of how do we do this better? How do we be creative at a time when I think a lot of generals would rather hunker down, in his situation. Yet he stays really aggressive on the front. And there's one town south of Metz. They all call it Maisie, and it's really a coal town. And there's like a coal slag on it. And I want to say the 90th and maybe the 5th and the 95th Infantry Division, which is new to combat, they just keep fighting back and forth with the Germans on this area. and it is costing Patton some casualties, but it's doing the same to the Germans. But he never pulls. He contemplates pulling out of the town, but never really does. And so, just let's just keep fighting. Let's just keep wearing the Germans down. And that fighting from September, October, November really does worry the Germans that they're not going to have the troops to do, the Battle of the Bulge, because he is wearing them down and costing them numbers. So, yeah, a real highlight of his generalship.
Awesome.
How was that, Don?
All right, Don, go easy on us from here on out.
All right, that was great.
Surprised. By the way, I'm surprised he hasn't asked a question about P. Wood yet. So I'm ready for a P. Wood question because he's the idol of the 4th Armored.
Oh, you might be waiting a long time.
Yeah.
All right, who were the 3 commanding generals of the 4th Armored Division in combat?
Well, he just said one.
All right, P. Wood. He's relieved, and they put Gaffey in charge, and then Gaffey is promoted, and they put. Hold on a second. Gaffey.
Oh man.
Dagger does command the division for a while. When Eddie goes on vacation, so I can take credit for that one. But Hoge. Hodge.
Bill Hodge.
He was the commander of he was a combat commander in the 9th Armored, and he captures Remagen Bridge, and that really, makes his name. And so he takes command. He's put in command of 4th Armored, and will command it for the rest of the war.
Yeah, he was a high-speed officer, and then he was a corps commander in Korea.
Yeah,
he was intimately involved in the whole fight at St. Vith. With his combat command alongside the 7th Armored Division, too.
Yep. And unfortunately, as soon as he takes over 4th Armored, Patton says, you're leading a special mission to rescue my son-in-law. And, every case I read, like, if this had been the guy in charge of 4th Armored since the beginning, he could have said, hell no. But he was brand new to the command. He did not have the experience or the gravitas at that time to say no. So, Mark, you could have answered that question easily.
I think so. There's a good save there, Kevin. I'll give you that one. All right, here we go. Here's a corner kick now. Who commanded 4th Armored Division at the time it was activated in 1941? Woo! That's a tough one. That's a tough one.
Come on,
I'll say
guy.
Gaffey. God, so just to refresh, P. Wood. Yeah, I want to say P. Wood commanded right from the get-go because he came from an artillery unit, and he was an artilleryman, which really speaks because Patton, was a cavalry guy, and he was all about movement, whereas P. Wood comes from artillery, and he's all about firepower. And so it's 2 different philosophies. But I want to say he was unless there was some guy commanding the division for like a week before P. Wood, which really Jack or John Wood, by the way. They called him P.
Tiger Jack.
Because, they called him P because in West Point, he tutored so many of his fellow students, they called him Professor. And, in fact, there was an incident in the breakout in, late July 44, where I think 2nd Armored is supposed to take Couton or Avranches, but 4th Armored steals the march. And the 2 units start firing on each other. And the guys with 2nd Armored said, hey, stop it. And they go, how do we know you're not Germans? And they said, stop it or we'll tell P. And they knew right then. They're like, okay, you guys are legit. You're American.
Didn't Pat fire him? I've always thought he got a pretty raw deal.
No, he got a very good deal because he was very insubordinate to General Eddie, his direct commander, calling his ideas stupid and things like that. And he should have been fired and sent home in disgrace. Patton said he was suffering fatigue, and so he wouldn't lose his rank or anything like that. Who was our favorite military historian over there at the time? Slam Marshall was with P when that all happened with Wood. And he said, right now he is kind of batshit crazy. because they said of him that when his armor was moving and attacking, he was fine. When things were stopped, he would get antsy and, kind of, I don't want to say crazy, but he would get antsy and edgy and things like that. But according to Slam Marshall, he was like pacing back and forth in his headquarters, kind of talking to himself, and he was like, "Yeah, this guy's kind of wacky." He wrote a very angry memoir that was never published, and I was able to get my hands on it. But he did not criticize Patton for firing him, but he really did lay it on Eisenhower, because when he was relieved of command, he came to Patton's headquarters and then went to Eisenhower, which is in Versailles at the time. And he's like, "Oh, these guys, the only time they've seen snow is when they had to shovel it off the sidewalk, and they're living in luxury and all this stuff." And justifiably bitter, I would say.
Sure.
So who was the first commander of the 4th Armored?
His name was the North Platte Canteen.
Yes!
Just kidding. All right.
You knew it, General Canteen.
It was great. And he was riding an M18. All right, the 4th Armored Division was activated on April 15th, 1941 at Pine Camp, New York.
Okay.
And its initial commander was Brigadier General Henry W. Baird.
Who?
Right. He led the division until May 42, when Major General John S. Wood took command.
Yeah, well, I'm sorry, I was thinking of that date, so Wood, but
Yeah.
Baird, who went on to
Who
be in
knows?
charge
Nice
of POWs in Louisiana or something like that, right?
Nice retirement.
Yeah.
Who knows?
We can find
I'm
out.
not familiar
Let's
with
see.
General Baird. I
No.
am loath to admit.
No, Henry Baird. Henry Wells Baird.
Oh, the commander of the North Platte Canteen.
Right. Yeah, there's not really much about him here.
The fighting North Platts.
He did a bang-up job with the North Platte Canteen. Give him his props.
All right, well, there you go. Not bad.
Was that a
Not
B
bad.
plus?
You got 4 out of 6.
Okay.
Right.
If we can get 4 out of 6 off of Don Fox, I'm pretty happy.
Off of Don Knotts, too.
Yeah.
You're
Thelma Lou.
Dude, Don Knotts.
Now
He must
Don Fox will never speak to me again.
when you could face down Barney Fife, you are a man.
Hey, a note on Don Fox. So I drove over the route of Task Force Baum, the group that tried to liberate Patton's son-in-law, and we're going to go into that in the future. And I called Don before I left. He walked me through the whole thing, and I even called him a few times when I got off the path back in the United States, and he was like, "Nope, you want to go down this road." Incredibly helpful, incredibly nice guy. He brought the 4th Armored back by writing the division history, a 2-volume. Did a real service to America by doing that. Because, John, we can argue different units and stuff, but when it comes to armor, the 4th Armored is the one that gets the flowers, justifiably so. And so Don did a great service.
Absolutely. That's a high-speed unit, and that, you always want, for a good unit history, someone who really knows it inside and out and can tell that story.
Yeah.
There you go. That's what Don did.
Yeah.
Yep.
Awesome.
Well,
So
all
now
right,
that we've done that, John.
we've reached the end of that rainbow. And we survived. We did survive. We lost a few tanks here and there, but we did survive.
Yeah, but we got the pot of gold, and
And we in the end, we found out that infantry is superior anyway. So, so
Yeah, John,
tell me, my friend, what you
John,
up to?
climb up on the tanks and we'll drive you in. So, John, what you been up to? What you been researching? What you been doing? I need to know.
I asked you first. You tell me
Oh.
first.
So, all right, this is going to be a weird one. So, but just hang on to me till the end.
Okay.
But the other night, I had this dream. I was in a C-130, and me and all these guys were going to parachute out. And they had all these black parachutes in like boxes, and we just reached in and grabbed them. And my parachute was like a backpack. It didn't have any like clips or anything. You just put it on. And I'm like, this isn't safe. We can't use this. And I'm watching guys jump out of the aircraft. And I'm like, should I put on like another backpack to like secure it or whatever? And I'm like, this just isn't right. And I woke up and I'm like, where did that come from? And I realized I've been reading Masters of the Air, the great miniseries, the great book by Don Miller, all about the 8th Air Force, the bombers going over Europe and bombing Germany. And I was reading how, and I always wondered about this, that the guys jumping out of their aircraft had never jumped with a parachute before. They never had airborne training. Paratroopers, they had to do 5 jumps back in the States. These bomber crews that rely on this to survive, no. The first time they jump with a parachute is when they're in a burning aircraft that's going down. And I'm imagining they've experienced watching other guys jump out during missions and seeing the Luftwaffe shoot them up or the parachute be on fire. Like, that's not a great confidence builder, and like just how terrifying that had to be. And I remember talking to a vet who had been a POW, and he said something to me that I had never, ever considered before. And he said the worst part about being a POW was trying to sleep at night because so many guys were having nightmares of burning planes and jumping out parachuting that they'd wake up screaming and you couldn't get a decent night's sleep. So for as bizarre as it is, that's my whatcha for today.
God, that is so true. And a lot of them didn't have reserve shoots.
Yeah.
Think about that. And yeah, I mean, no dress rehearsal, no training of any kind. Just, good luck. Here's your
And
shoot.
John, what if you're a ball turret gunner? You take your parachute off to get into the ball turret and do your job, And if your plane starts going down and the gravity is pulling left and right, you can't get out of there. You can't put on a parachute.
You're kind of dependent upon your crewmates to get you out of there.
Yeah.
If it can be done at all, and whether your parachute would still be there versus sliding around or something. I mean, it's just horrifying. Now, the other thing I'd add is we've done our own kind of Stump the Chump with psychologists who have analyzed your dream, and they've said you're a very disturbed individual. So, but it was an entertaining yarn. It was, absolutely. So,
Yep.
all right, so.
Let me just add this real quick. I saw this in the book, and maybe you remember it. There was one crew. They were talking about the crews that really stuck together did the best, and there was this one crew. They all made a pact that if one goes, they all go. And sure enough, it was the ball turret gunner couldn't get out as the plane was going down, and like the guy who was the top gunner hadn't been part of the pact, so he goes to jump out, and he sees them all gathered by the ball turret because they were all going down with the guy that couldn't go out. And I just that blows me away. That loyalty, that camaraderie. It cost those lives, but I'm sure those other crews heard about that story and were bolstered by it. So I digress, John. You were whatcha up to?
Absolutely. Yeah, and by the way, great book. We highly recommend it.
Yeah.
Great miniseries. We'll be talking
And we're going to
about
talk about it very soon, as one of us finishes reading it.
Yeah, right. So in my case, so last week we had a really cool event here. My friend Luke Hughes came to St. Louis. Luke is the designer of Burden of Command, which is basically a World War II role-playing game in which you play a captain in the 7th Infantry Regiment, commanding troops in World War II in the real scenarios, and it's based on my book. I was the historical consultant, and so what we did is we had an event at the St. Louis County Library in which Luke and I just kind of had a conversation about where do video games meet real history kind of thing, and discussing the intersection there, because of course many people, as you guys know, I mean, that's how they come to study history, is through video games, especially a lot of my students, by the way. We had an amazing turnout. We had tons of good questions. It was like, the Stump the Chump live right there, for both of us. It was a really neat deal. And so in case there's anybody who's watching or listening with part of that, I just want to thank you for coming out and making that night just a huge success all the way around.
John, I want to mention 2 things about that. One, it's interesting that the people come to history through games. I mean, let's be honest. We came to history because of movies and television, a different medium that brought us to the books. And number 2, John, what's the title of the book that it's based on? Because you wrote a 2-volume history of the 7th Infantry Regiment. What is the title of the book that the video game or the game is based on?
Yeah, so the title of the book is American Courage, American Carnage. I can do you one better and just show it to you.
There we go. Yep.
Just a
Is that the
shameless.
paperback version?
This is the brand new paperback version, which can be had pretty much anywhere. So it's called American Courage, American Carnage. The 7th Infantry Regiment's Combat Experience 1812 through World War II. So have you probably gleaned, the 7th was part of the 3rd ID. That's the original version of it. Yeah, this is the brand new version of it.
One of us cares. Yeah.
It's me, obviously. I know.
And maybe I'll read it someday. So yeah.
Well, I hope you do. You could really learn a lot. I'm telling you. But, all right, so let me give the email address so that you can send Stump the Chump questions, which we love getting. Please keep sending them. It's so much fun. So
Except
it's World
not
War
Don
II Live.
Fox. Not Don Fox.
Well, not Don Knotts either, too.
Yeah.
So,
And not Thelma Lou.
or Andy Griffith. World War II Live at gmail.com. World War II Live at gmail.com with the numeral 2, not the Roman numeral, the regular Arabic
Number
numeral.
2.
So, this has been so good. We covered part of Sicily. We'll get back to that too in a future episode, we promise. And we had some great questions. We had some great watcha, and we really appreciate everybody joining us. And Roger out.